We want to stay with that story, not climate, but rather Donald Trump. Now, the the president-elect has continued to raise hackles all over the place, and with the dust still settling after the U.S. elections, we take a dive in on what a Trump presidency would mean for multinationals. Now, KTN's Abiagina spoke to Andrew Skipper. He is the head of Hogan Lovells Africa practice on what might tilt in matters trade and business. Take a look.
I was in Washington only last week, and it's fair to say that the result has been a surprise. At Hogan Lovells, we're a global firm, a global law firm, with 50% or half our business is in the US. So obviously this is it will impact on us and our clients. But I think people shouldn't panic about this. It's a democratic process. The world hasn't changed. And we need to sit calmly and work out what will happen next. I agree with you on the uncertainty point, though. I think nobody likes uncertainty, and uncertainty can slow things down.
And speaking about uncertainty, we did see a number of polls indicating Hillary Clinton was likely to take over the presidency. Perhaps being a Brit, you've also seen what happened in the Brexit. Perhaps what, in your view, actually informed these outcomes?
I think the pollsters themselves need to take a long, hard look at themselves. The UK general election last year, the Brexit referendum, and now the US elections, the pollsters clearly get it wrong. A lot of us go to sleep thinking one thing and wake up finding out something completely different, which isn't very good for the heart rate. I think that what people need to learn is that they need to listen to everybody, and that the focusing on smaller groups of people is not necessarily appropriate.
And just to push this conversation forward, being a global firm with a presence across the world, perhaps how does this? What are some of the implications of this election for firms that have a presence across the globe?
I think what everybody likes, and business and law firms and business alike like, is certainty. They need to know that when they go into business and make investments, they are sure of what's going to happen. The fact is, at the moment, we live in a frankly disrupted and uncertain world, and inevitably that means, whilst there are big opportunities for people, at the moment people will be thinking hard. I mean, the immediate reaction tends to go to safe havens, but I think people with a long-term view will take the view that markets such as Africa, where I come regularly, are markets where medium to long term you have to be, and that you have to adapt your business to ensure that you make the most of those opportunities.
All right. And as a company, Hogan Lovells, you intend to sort of have a new strategy for East African market. Perhaps if you could let us in on this.
Yeah, I mean, as a global player, it is inevitable and quite right that we should be looking at Africa. 3 years ago, we established a significant presence in Johannesburg with more than 100 lawyers, and we've operated in Africa for over 40 years. Mainly out of the hubs around the world in say, London, Paris, Dubai, Washington, New York, Beijing. So we operate into Africa a lot. And we see Africa as a very important play, particularly medium to long term, and we need to be here. Narrowing that down then to East Africa and Kenya, obviously the recent oil crisis has not affected East Africa as much as it has West Africa. So the issues in Nigeria, where I was recently, for example, with the unavailability of dollars, which really do substantially impact on investment, don't so much affect East Africa. So that's an area which we are certainly looking at.
And speaking about Nigeria and also South Africa, we've also seen the potential impact of Brexit, what it would mean for African countries. Do you foresee any shocks that might hit the markets?
I think the only thing one can say about Brexit at the moment is that it means Brexit. And there is a significant amount of uncertainty there. However, it's very clear that if you combine the election in the US with Brexit, that a level of uncertainty about the approach from the outside world into Africa is inevitably going to rise. If you look at Brexit, for example, the UK makes a contribution of around 15%, I believe, to the European budget, the European aid budget globally. Historically, the British contributions have been relatively broad and relatively benign. They will continue, I assume, at 0.7% of GDP, but in a world where GDP goes down, that will inevitably reduce potentially that number. And I think the focus of aid may change. And by aid, I mean not just support, but support for businesses as well. So, I mean, the aid into, dealing with Somalia, for example, I think we need to check out the focus. I'm not saying what will happen, but I think the uncertainties could well make a difference.
Mm-hmm. And Mr. Skip, just the other day I was speaking to Priti Patel, who is the UK Secretary for International Development, and she seemed to emphasize that there's a lot of need for technology and innovation to drive trade. Perhaps from where you sit, do you feel technology is sort of impacting on consumer behavior across the markets?
I think it's impacting in an extraordinary way. We, at Hogan Lovells, we have a wide range of focus across the world. We have a big Silicon Valley presence, for example, and so inevitably we look at that a lot. But if you look at Africa, the opportunities, I think the opportunities are enormous in Africa, from mobile technology with M-Pesa and things like that, which are already there, but also with artificial intelligence and blockchain technology, which could revolutionize. But I think, stepping back from that, the opportunities are there, but the dangers are there as well. The recent elections have clearly shown a mistrust for big data, big business, big everything. And with big data in particular, whilst the opportunities are there, the more technology, potentially the less jobs. And with a rapidly expanding population of youth, you might say, what's the point in having a bigger workforce than you might have in India and China combined in the next few years if they haven't got anything to do.
And perhaps, Andrew, as we wrap it up, Hogan Lovells is also keen in terms of building alliances with the law firms in Kenya. Perhaps if you could just give us some insights around any form of partnerships, mergers or even acquisitions you are looking at.
Certainly. Our strategy in Africa is clear. We're here and we're here to stay, but at the moment we're not looking to set up independently in Kenya or other countries outside South Africa. We have the Kenyan legal market is excellent, and we have very strong collaborations with some very good local independent firms, and we're very comfortable with working with them for our clients. Hogan Lovells takes a very collaborative approach in this respect. So.
Interesting. And perhaps if you can just get your wrapping thoughts around what do you see in the horizon for Africa? We've seen a number of reports saying Africa is the next frontier. Kenya was ranked among the fastest growing economies in sub-Saharan Africa. Where does Africa sit on the global map?
I think Africa sits at the moment, and I think that the danger Africa has that there's a loss of focus with everything else going on because people start looking internally. From my point of view, I'm passionate about the opportunities in Africa, which is why I spend at least a week, a month here. And I think that overall, the truth is, if you're not in Africa now, for the mid to long term, you'll be irrelevant when the time comes. And we're committed to being here.